In a significant diplomatic moment in New Delhi, Brazilian President Luiz Inacio Lula da Silva delivered a message that resonated far beyond the ceremonial setting of a joint press appearance. Standing alongside Prime Minister Narendra Modi, Lula made it clear, terrorism must never become a pretext for actions that violate international law. His statement comes at a time when global tensions remain high, from conflicts in Europe to instability in West Asia, and his words appeared carefully chosen to reflect Brazil's long-standing emphasis on multilateralism and rule-based global order. Lula stressed that while terrorism is a serious global threat, responses to it must remain within the framework of international law. The remark, subtle yet powerful, signals Brazil's concern about unilateral military actions and interventions that bypass global consensus. It also reinforces the broader Global South narrative that security concerns cannot override sovereign principles and legal norms. The Brazilian president, who was in India to attend the AI Impact Summit earlier this week, used his visit not only to discuss bilateral ties, but also to weigh in on major global crises. On Ukraine, Lula reiterated Brazil's position that the war must end through dialogue and diplomacy. Brazil has consistently advocated for negotiations rather than prolonged military confrontation, positioning itself as a potential bridge between competing blocs. He also called for urgent humanitarian relief for Palestinians, highlighting the worsening humanitarian crisis. Brazil has been vocal in urging a ceasefire and expanded humanitarian corridors, reinforcing its diplomatic stance that civilian suffering must be addressed immediately. But beyond geopolitics, this visit was also about strengthening one of the most important partnerships in the Global South. Lula revealed that bilateral trade between India and Brazil reached a record $15 billion in 2025, a milestone reflecting deepening economic engagement. He proposed revisiting the ambitious target of $30 billion in trade by 2030. Prime Minister Modi, in his remarks, underscored that Brazil is India's largest trading partner in Latin America. He expressed confidence that both nations can push trade beyond $20 billion within the next 5 years. This growing economic partnership is not limited to conventional trade. Both leaders highlighted collaboration in disaster-resilient infrastructure, a key priority for India as it expands its coalition for disaster-resilient infrastructure initiatives. Cooperation in critical minerals was also emphasized, an area of strategic importance as countries compete to secure supply chains for green energy and advanced technologies. Defense cooperation featured in the discussions as well, indicating that the India-Brazil relationship is expanding beyond commerce into strategic dominance. Perhaps the most geopolitically significant part of Lula's statement was his reference to UN reform. Brazil, India, Germany, and Japan, collectively known as the G4, will continue pushing for an expanded and more representative United Nations Security Council. For decades, both India and Brazil have argued that the current structure of the Security Council reflects the realities of 1945, not the 21st century. Their call for reform seeks greater representation for emerging powers and developing nations. The alignment between New Delhi and Brasilia on this issue highlights a shared frustration with the slow pace of global institutional reform. As major democracies from the Global South, both countries see themselves as legitimate candidates for permanent membership. This visit, therefore, was not just ceremonial. It signaled deeper strategic alignment between two large democracies with growing global ambitions. At a time when geopolitical rivalries are intensifying, India and Brazil appear to be reinforcing a multipolar approach, one that emphasizes sovereignty, legal norms, economic cooperation, and institutional reform. Lula's carefully worded warning against using terrorism as justification for unlawful interventions may resonate particularly strongly in a world where counter-terror narratives often shape foreign policy decisions. Meanwhile, India's expanding partnerships across continents from Latin America to Africa and Europe underscore its evolving role as a central player in global diplomacy. The India-Brazil partnership is increasingly being seen as a pillar of South-South cooperation. From trade expansion to defense collaboration, from climate action to UN reform, the two nations are positioning themselves not just as regional powers, but as global agenda setters. As the world navigates wars, humanitarian crises, and institutional gridlock, this meeting in New Delhi may well be remembered as part of a broader push toward a more balanced and representative global order. The message was clear: economic cooperation must grow, humanitarian crises must be addressed, wars must end through dialogue, and international law must remain the guiding principle in combating terrorism.